Hey y'all, it's Cam again. So this is gonna be page 15 of the JFK docs, video 4, but this is the second one for that little series because this document is like 18 pages. It's a lot of words per page, just like close together, so it's harder to get through. But anyway, I said I would start on G here. And this says on 12th or 13th of October 1963, after AM Fauna 14 had been released, she was telephoned at her place of employment by Angel Bringus, who told her guardedly that this dude, because I'm not using that name and I know it just means black, but we're not going to go there. It says, had been arrested and said that he would like to send a female cousin of his to talk to AM Fauna 14. A meeting was arranged in the home of AM Fauna 14's mother. The female cousin, whose name was Gladys, told AM Fauna 14 that Bringus had gone into hiding and wondered whether the family with which she worked, the AM Cogs, could help him get into asylum. AM Fauna 14 said that she doubted this. Gladys told AM Fauna 14 that in case it were possible to do anything for Bringus, she told, or she should telephone Gladys with an innocent message. It was understood that a meeting would take place at 1800 hours on the same day of the telephone call at the 10-cent store, 23rd between 10th and 12th in Vidalo. AM Fauna 14 does not remember Gladys's telephone number, which was left with her mother. In spite of what AM Fauna 14 told the DSE, AM Fauna had nothing to do with Negret. AM Fauna 14 had told this story to protect AM Cog 2. Negret had known that AM Cog 2 was involved and had once had a meeting with her in her home. Nevertheless, AM Fauna 14 debriefed AM Cog 2 on the cover story, which she had told the DSC, and told her that in case she were ever arrested and questioned, she should admit having talked to Negra in her home, but deny having been involved in the communications channel or knowing anything about it. Station comment, Luis Braulio VR Negret appears to be identical with Luis Negret VR, born 14th of November 1939 in Consolacion del Sur, Pinar del Rio, who is carded as ACSI source number 492 and appears in Ambud correspondence as national coordinator of the Acción Revolucionaria Democrática El Guajiro. Guajiro. Oh my goodness, Bermudez appears to be identical with Gerardo Jose Quesada Vasquez 201-292-022, born 9th of May 1919, Pinar del Rio, president and founder of Acción Revolucionaria Democrática and ACSI source number, maybe it's 106 or something. There are no station traces on Angel Bringas. The 1962 Havana telephone directory has no listing under 20490. I think this is Cuba, maybe. Is listed to Rafael Labatitz, something like that. And then this maybe something 39 and then 4117 Mariano. JM Way has no traces on him. There's no listing under 705570. However, under 705579, there is a Cubana de Rios X Efoto, SA Kaya 23 in Larampa. And then Abad appeared to be particularly interested in how Negra and Julio obtained their funds and kept returning to this subject during the interrogation. Abad then addressed himself to the contents of the envelope and a suitcase found in A.M. Fauna 14's apartment. He commented that all these things appeared to belong to A.M. Fauna 1 and his son and asked how they happened to be there. A.M. Fauna 14 replied that A.M. Fauna 1 and his son, together with A.M. Fauna 3, had been hiding for a few days in her apartment because their usual hiding place had become unavailable. Abad wanted to know how and when A.M. Fauna 14 had first met A.M. Fauna 1. A.M. Fauna 14 replied that she had met A.M. Fauna 1 in about February of 1962. That A.M. Fauna 1 had regularly parked his car in a lot near uh, her office, and that they had seen each other on the street frequently. The A.M. Fauna 1 had finally spoken to her, and that a friendship had developed, which finally turned into a love affair. Comment: this was a lie told to conceal the fact that it had been A.M. Cutler, too, who had introduced them. She said that A.M. Fauna 1 had been her lover until about July of 1962, when she broke up with him because he was too busy with clandestine work to pay the proper amount of attention to her. Abad asked what part A.M. Fauna 14 had played in A.M. Fauna 1's clandestine activities. A.M. Fauna 14 replied that A.M. Fauna 1 would sometimes telephone her late at night to invite her to go out for a ride, and she would then find that A.M. Fauna 1 was going out to have agent meetings and wanted her along for cover. Abad asked Abad asked whom A.M. Fauna 1 had been meeting. A.M. Fauna 14 mentioned a person known as Gustavo. It gave the physical description of A.M. Fauna 24, whom she knew to be safely out of Cuba. She never knew A.M. 24's true name. She also mentioned Manolo Villamaran, the true name of A.M. A.M. Fauna 13, whom she had known only as A.M. Fauna's business partner, but when she thought she could safely mention now that he was out of Cuba, for good measure, she added a notional name and physical description. Referring back to A.M. Fauna 1's automobile, Abad asked what kind of car he had been driven. A.M. Fauna 14 replied that it was a gray, silver, or Chevrolet Impala. She repeated that A.M. Fauna 1 had formerly parked it near her office, but said that she had not seen it recently. Abad asked where A.M. Fauna 1's red car was, and she said she did not know. He asked what the license number on this car was, and she said she did not know. He never asked anything about the third car which A.M. Fauna 1 had obtained. Abad commented that the DSE had observed A.M. Fauna 1 in his automobile in the Havana dock area on 1st of January 1963, having a meeting with another person. A.M. Fauna 14 recalls that this other person was A.M. Fauna 24, and that he and A.M. Fauna 1 had rendezvoused in the dock area after an attempt to pick up A.M. Fauna 1's radio, with reference to the Cubark agent known as Julio, whom they have recently identified with A.M. Fauna 1. Abad said that he knew that Julio had left Cuba in October of 1962 and believed that he had gone to Europe, but he said he did not know where Julio had gone clandestinely or legally. A.M. Fauna 14 was asked about A.M. Fauna 1's subsources in other provinces, but she said she knew nothing about them. Abad said he was sure that AM Fauna 1 had a good source on the Isle of Pines, whose near name might be Raoul. Abad also mentioned the name of a person who had been shot about 2 weeks previously and who had believed had been working with AM Fauna 1. AM Fauna does not remember the name of this person. Abad asked if AM Fauna 1's son had helped him in this clandestine work. AM Fauna 14 replied that the son had been with AM Fauna 1 frequently, but she thought it was only because he was helping AM Fauna 1 with this business and that the son probably had nothing to do with the clandestine work. Abad again turned to the envelope of papers found in AM Fauna 1's apartment and said he could see she was not cooperating with him. She was not volunteering information, he said, but waiting to be asked questions. Abad said he was sure that there was much that AM Fauna 14 could tell him spontaneously, and he intimated that there might be a chance for her to rehabilitate herself. Abad asked her where the passenger list came from. AM Fauna 14 replied that they had been left in her apartment by AM Fauna 1, who intended and instructed her later by SW what to do with them. She said that AM Fauna 1 had trained her in the system and had left her his materials so that he could use her as a stopgap communications link while he was trying to recognize his net or reorganize his net. This is contact. Okay, so I guess it's a case number or not a case number, but a person number, category number. I can't remember what we called it earlier. Abad told her that this was plainly not true because some of the lists were dated later than AM Fauna 1's departure date. He said he supposed that they had been brought to AM Fauna 14's apartment by AM Cutler 2, who had been observed coming there on 5th of October with Lolan Corioso. This was true according to AM Fauna 14, AM Cutler 2, and Lolan Corioso brought the passenger manifest to AM 14's house at about 1630 or 1700 hours on 5th of October, and it stayed about 15 minutes. At 1400s that same day, AM Fauna 14 had a meeting with AM Fauna 39, the first in 2 weeks, initiated by AM Fauna 13 by means of a telephone call to AM Fauna 1's mother, who was serving as cutout between them. AM Fauna 39 had called the meeting to ask whether she had received any instructions from AM Fauna 1 as to how to act in case of an internal uprising, which a number of people in Cuba seemed to be expecting about that time as a result of the destruction caused by Hurricane Flora. The DSE interrogators never at any time mentioned AM Fauna 39 or asked her about this earlier meeting, so AM Fauna 14 concludes that she had not been under intensive surveillance that day. Either AM Cutler 2 had been under surveillance on 5th of October, or she herself had been under some kind of periodic spot check. Abad asked AM Fauna 14 how she had become acquainted with AM Cutler 2, and AM Fauna 14 replied that she had met AM Cutler 2 through AM Fauna 15, the wife of a cousin of AM Fauna 14, who was a prisoner on the Isle of Pines. Abad then asked AM Fauna 14 where her SW materials were, which surprised Amphiona 14 because she had thought they had been found during her house search and were part of the incriminating envelope which Abad was holding. Amphiona 14 told Abad where to look for the materials and he sent someone to get them. Abad wanted to know how Amphiona 1 and Amphiona 3 had gotten out of Cuba. Amphiona 14 said she did not know. She said she understood they were to get their instructions on the street once they had left her apartment. Abad abruptly asked Amphiona 14 whether she knew anybody in Lugano. Amphiona 14 said she did not. Abad then produced a photograph of Amphiona 14 together with Amphiona 1 and Amwe 2 and told her that she had been in Amwe, I think that's what they say, two's home in Lugano with Amphiona 1 on Saturday, 7th of September. He asked Amphiona 14 whether Amwe 2 were employed in an embassy. Amphiona 14 said she did not know, but she thought so. She said she knew Amwe 2 to be a personal friend of Amphiona 1 and thought that he might occasionally have helped Amphiona 1 with his mail. It was true that Amphiona 14 had gone to Amwe 2's house on 7th of September with Amphiona 1. Later the same day, Amphiona 1 took her to Miramar to introduce her to Amphiona, maybe this is 39. Because the DSC later expressed any interest in AM39, Amphiona 14 concluded that they had not observed this meeting and that therefore it had been Amwe 2 who had been under surveillance on 7th of September and not herself or Amphiona 1. She also concluded that the DSC had been inefficient in not transferring their surveillance to herself and Amphiona 1. Abad again changed the subject suddenly. Where's the radio? He asked. Could Amwe 2 have it? Amphiona 14 said she did not know anything about a radio. Where's the camera? Asked Abad. Amphiona 14 admitted having seen Amphiona 1 with the Minox camera, but she said she did not know what Amphiona 1 had done with it. She said she had hoped that Amphiona 1 would leave it with her and pretended to be hurt that he had not done so. Abad asked her whether she had ever seen one like it in the Amcog house, and Amphiona 1 or 14 said that she had. Throughout the interrogation, Abad kept reverting to the subject of the camera and the radio. Abad asked Amphiona 14 what her connection was with the Amcog family. She replied that her grandmother was the cousin of Amcog's 3's mother. Abad said that the whole family had been under observation for a long time and mentioned an organization, name not remembered by Amphiona 14, which Amcog 2 had worked with during the Batista era. What he wanted to know was Amcog 3 doing, or what was doing. Amphiona 14 said that she did not think he was doing anything clandestine. Abad replied that the DSE was positive that Amcog 3 was doing secret work. Amphiona 14 said that the DSE should not delude itself that the entire family was too selfish to engage in anything of the kind. Abad asked what the diplomatic visitors to the Amcog household talked about. Amphiona 14 said that they never talked politics. Abad asked about the attitude of the doctor, Amcog's uncle, and Amphiona 14 said that he was waiting for the situation to settle. What about Amphiona 3? asked Abad, did she work with Amphana 1? Amphana 14 says she did not, but that she sometimes gave him information. Abad wanted to know whether Amphana 3 had been working with someone in Florida. Amphana 14 answered that Amphana 3 had been involved somehow with her sister who lives in Florida. Abad asked whether Amphana 14 had been a good friend of Amphana 3, and she said that she had been. Abad asked whether Amphana 14 had ever heard Amphana 3 speak about the Escambray insurgents. Amphana 14 said that she had not. Abad asked whether Amphana 3 had contacts with any embassy people, for example, the Spanish embassy. Amphana 14 said that she did not know of any such contacts. How about Am Cutler 2? Asked Abad. We know that she spends a lot of time there, Amphana said. She did not. Abad asked Amphana 14 if she were a revolutionary. Amphana 14 she was not, but that neither was she against the revolution. She said that she had joined the militia early in the revolution, but had soon dropped out because there were some things about the revolution which she did not understand. For instance, she could not understand why there should be so many shortages and rationing, whereas before the revolution there had been plenty. Abad explained that the shortages were the result of the imperialist blockade of Cuba. And Fauna 14 said that she could understand this, but that it did not explain why there should be a shortage of coffee when Cuba grew it its own. Abad said that the coffee was in short supply because Cuba was sending coffee to the Soviet Union in gratitude for Soviet assistance in overcoming shortages caused by the imperialist blockade. AM Fauna 14 replied that this was very logical now that it had been explained to her, and said she wondered why the revolutionary government did not publicly say so in order to put an end to public grumbling on the subject. Early in the morning of 9th of October, Abad produced the letter, which Fauna received from Fauna 1 on 7th of October, and held up the letter to the light, examining it carefully for traces of SW. Fauna 14's developer pills were brought, and she was told to develop the letter, which she did in the presence of Abad, Carlos, and a third man whom she was unable to get a good look at. All were very surprised and disappointed when no secret writing appeared. They kept asking her if she was sure uh, she was doing it right, and began in, intimid- intimating that she was deceiving them. Okay. A staging comment, it is indeed surprising that no secret writing appeared, because this letter was almost undoubtedly the one containing SW message number 1 to AM Fauna 14. And AM Fauna 14 also explained the use of her carbons. The only accommodation address she gave away was AM Fauna 1's JM Wave area post office box. She deliberately protected the Rosa Justice address, the home of Ampan 2, not knowing whether this was a real or a fictitious person. Carlos and Ava now invited Fauna 14 to work with them. She replied that she might be willing to do so, but first wanted to know what work would be expected of her. For instance, she said she would not inform on people in her office. They told her that this would not be asked of her, because that sort of work is done by the defense committees. Her work, they said, will be much more important, namely maintaining a link between themselves and Cuba. She said that would be all right. but she was afraid that it would not last long because Cubark would probably put her on ice as soon as they learned that she'd been arrested. They told her not to worry about that. Carlos and Abad suggested to her that AM Fauna 1 had briefed her to agree to cooperate with them. She denied this, claiming that she had not really wanted to work with AM Fauna 1 at all, but had merely let herself be imposed on for old time's sake. They asked whether they could trust her. She said she thought so, and asked whether she could trust them to keep their promises. They assured her that she could and said she would be released the following day. In the morning of 10th of October, after being told that she was to be released, Fauna was moved to a similar or smaller cell without a bath. She sent for Abad and complained that he had double crossed her. He told her that he was going to keep his word and release her, but that her original cell was needed for some new prisoners who were expected. He said that the DSC had received advance word that a boatload of refugees were going to try to leave Cuba that night. Many of them were women, and one of them was pregnant, so he wanted the larger cell with the bath for them. Abad always treated Fauna kindly and considerately. When she had a headache, he ordered aspirin for her, saw to it that she received soft drinks when she wanted them, and he seemed to be honestly distressed whenever she wept. AM Fauna 14 believes that it had been the DSC's intention from the very beginning to recruit her because she doubts that all DSC prisoners are treated as well. The first SW messages, which AM Fauna 14 wrote, while under DSC control, was dated 10th of October and the day of her release. The DSC officers asked her what her control signal was, and she replied that it was a rubric, but also included her true control signal. She deliberately numbered her first control SW message number 2 to conceal the fact that she had already written several messages containing intelligence reports. In all, she wrote 3 SW messages under control. She was obliged to write each one in duplicate, one of which was mailed and the other given to DSC for study. One day, Carlos came to her very angrily, said he doubted that her carbons were anything more than ordinary paper because he had been unable to develop anything that she had written, and threatened her with rearrest. AM Fauna 14 told him that she did not know anything about it, but that if by chance he had tried to develop the letters she had written with the pills he had taken from her, it would not work. This surprised Carlos, and AM Fauna 14 explained that there were 2 different SW systems, one for outgoing mail and the other for incoming. Carlos then asked her if there were any significance to the size of envelope used or to the way the letter paper was folded. AM Fauna 14 says she did not think so. AM Fauna feels that Carlos and Abad never completely believed that she had had an SW system because none of the letters which she received disclosed SW when developed, and one of the letters which she wrote showed any traces of SW when held up to glancing lights. Carlos was the DSC officer who maintained contact with AM Fauna 14 after her release. For 2 or 3 weeks, he saw her every day at her apartment, sometimes for only 20 minutes and sometimes staying for several hours, frequently late at night. Occasionally, he called her at her office. Finally, AM Fauna 14 told him that she had to uh, get up early in the morning to go to work and asked him to visit her early in the evening, which he agreed to. At the time of the intercepted AM Glossy landing in Pinar del Rio, Carlos did not visit Aunt Fauna for 14 for 5 days. When he finally returned, he was dirty, sweaty, and tired. He dictated an SW letter he wanted Aunt Fauna to send to Cuba, and while she was writing it, he fell asleep. Aunt Fauna had to prepare written reports for him, which also signed with the pseudonym Dolores. He told her never to call him at DSE headquarters because he was never there. Once he brought her a book on Marxism to read and promised to take her someday to visit a collective farm in Pinar del Rio province. Despite this occasional efforts, or his occasional efforts, to get her to pick up the threads of the AM Fauna net, AM Fauna 14 believes that the primary target she was intended to work against was the Amcog household. From remarks made by both Abad and Carlos, she deduced that they already had an informer in the house, but that they were not satisfied with his production. Toward the end of her period of DSC controlled activity, she felt that the DSC was becoming relatively less interested in AM Fauna 1 and his net and more in the AM Cog household. So I'm going to stop it here and then try to do maybe one more video. If not, it may be two because this just keeps going and going. And it's got like, this is already at 50. I mean, I know it's only page 9, so hopefully we're halfway there. Hopefully it's just a bunch of names at the end, but I'll start here on 50 and then hopefully we get this finished today. Oh my goodness. This one's long, but it's giving a lot of detail, so whatever. It's just part of it. Anyway, talk to y'all a little bit later. I'll try to get this one up this afternoon. See y'all. Bye.